right? So our database supports SQL 2003 BNF, that's the full language specs for 2003 SQL, and it supports ODBC as well as JDBC. Okay, so what you can do is you can basically swap out your existing relational database, swap in Blobcity, without having to change anything on your application, because the language that the application speaks, the database already understands. Right, so it's basically nothing to do with Oracle. It doesn't wrap around Oracle or anything. You'll have to move that to Blobcity, basically.
Excuse me.
Sorry? Yes, absolutely. In fact, once you take a subscription, we migrate everything for you. One time, so we'll migrate all your Oracle data to Blobcity, ensure it works with your application. Once you're satisfied, that's it, deployed.
It provides all functions and features which provided by Microsoft SQL Server?
You're saying whether Blobcity gives you all the relational features?
Correct. Provided by Microsoft SQL Server.
Now, I'm not sure
like
if there are specific features.
Procedures, like procedures, cursors.
Yes? Sorry? Procedures?
Procedures.
Yes.
And cursors, views.
What's
These
that?
features it provides, Blobcity.
Yes,
Cursors, yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. See, to basically support ODBC, we have to support cursors. Okay, the ODBC and JDBC specs itself have cursor specifications within them. It supports all of that. If you're talking about a relational model, it supports all of that. Now, I'm not sure if we might have missed anything that's specific to MS SQL. Okay, I wouldn't know. Specific to Oracle, I wouldn't know.
Okay.
Right? But whatever is generally required from a relational system, we have all of it.
Okay. Have you ever tested with that? Like removing the Microsoft SQL Server and keeping this?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We do that day in and day out. So we basically move your data from Oracle or MS SQL into Blobcity, and your application connects to it, and it's fully functional.
Okay, thank you.
We do it. We have a tool that does it from these systems. In fact, even if you export your data into SQL format, you can import the SQL file directly into Blobcity, right? Because we have full SQL support. So it's not that difficult. Even if you export it to CSV, simply speaking CSV will also get imported. They get, basically, so if you're talking about, say, a relationship, right, one-to-one relationship, so we have standard trigger functions which mimic one-to-one relationships. So when we are exporting schema from your relational system into Blobcity, wherever you have a foreign key, right, in your relational system, that will get replaced with an equivalent trigger in Blobcity.
Yeah, that's fine, but the procedures where you have some logic written, business logic and all, how do you migrate those? You have to rewrite? You have to rewrite over here, right?
You have to rewrite, yes. Filters and everything have to be rewritten. Triggers have to be rewritten. Yes, that you cannot
migrate.
That you cannot migrate. Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
We have few functions like sum, averages, all of them. Correlations and all those advanced functions are still not there, but we are working on adding that support. But it doesn't limit you. Why? Because in the filter, you can write the function directly. Right? You write your correlation formula in the filter, it's going to behave the same. All we have to do is just give you standard implementations of these in our database. Right? Yes, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It does. It does. In fact, even if you want to add your custom encoding, custom encryption, you can just encrypt it in the trigger before the insert. So all data the trigger will insert and put in, the filter can decode while it's fetching. What type of partitioning strategy? You don't need a partitioning strategy here. So this will scale up. I understand why you're doing that for your existing relational system, right? But over here you don't need that. You can still retain it, no implication. Right? You can retain it as it is, or you can just combine and make your whole program simpler, right? And you don't have to bother about scalability. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so let's do this. We'll take all questions one-on-one. We have a desk, so you can come to our desk, and we'll break for coffee. So
Yeah, So thanks a lot,
Thank
Sanket.
you.
It was once again a wonderful topic covered. So I'm very sure that many of you will be looking at solutions offered by Blob City. However, since there are a lot many Q&As that can be done over a tea and coffee break that we're going to slip into, and we're going to reassemble in the next 20 minutes. I have with me none other than the founder director of Blob City, Mr. Sanket Saral, who has covered a very interesting topic today around the next generation database. And it was very insightful, and we would like to hear from the man himself that covered the topic. So Mr. Saral, how was the experience and the kind of platform that we provided, where you could impart a whole lot of information? And what was the kind of response that you received from the people? If you could just elaborate on that, yeah, that would be great.
I think Unicom is very good in terms of the organization. We are involved with them as a sponsor, and we spoke at 5 locations, and we saw excellent response from Unicom in terms of getting key industry professionals, into attending the conference, spending time and listening to what we have to say. And it was organized very well, is what I feel personally. And the amount of the kind of crowd was pretty good. Some of them are decision makers, key decision makers from some companies. And we look forward to basically building prototypes for all these clients. Discussions have been good. We have had good interactions, and it seems like a promising commitment in terms of we being able to market a product by using Unicom's platform and closing some sales. So I would like to thank Unicom. It has been a wonderful experience.
Thank you so much, Mr. Saran. It was indeed a pleasure having you as a sponsor, and we certainly look forward to a long-term relationship with Blob City in the years to come. And we certainly shall, take it a step forward in terms of having conferences both in India and overseas.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
All good, great. So, good afternoon. I'm Shankar. I'm managing consultant for Shapeblue India. I've been working on infrastructure and DevOps for the last 14 years, mostly on distributed systems at Yahoo and later at InMobi. Currently, I build public and private clouds, and I'm very active with the Apache Cloud Stack and FreeBSD communities. So I would be a good person in case you want to reach out for how open source and big data works. But today I'm going to be talking about how clouds and big data work. But feel free to stop me to ask how the relevant technologies in open source also play a factor. About Shapeblue. So Shapeblue are expert builders of public and private clouds. We are a globally leading consultancy for Apache Cloud Stack and Citrix Cloud Platform. How many of you are familiar with Apache Cloud Stack? Oh, it's quite a lot. Great. OpenStack? Okay, same amount of people. So I guess people have been evaluating their options on building private and public clouds in-house. Let's look at just some of the customers that we have built clouds for. So I have a case study at the end of my deck, and that will be talking about Sky. Sky, if people are familiar with the DTH provider called Tata Sky, their parent company. So we'll be talking about how they are using big data on a private cloud a little later.
So as a result, we thought of just expanding and basically spreading our wings overseas.
All right. So this is how we're going to be looking at. We're going to be looking at the trend that's prevailing right now. You've been sitting through the whole day. People have been talking to you about big data solutions. And one recurring theme you'll always see is how you move your data to a public cloud, right? Their solution is built on the cloud, a third-party public cloud, and they talk about how you can export from your SQL Server, from your Oracle, how they provide JDBC, ODBC connectivity, and magically everything is scale-out storage and scale-out compute using Amazon Web Services. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about the trend and why people want to be doing that. Once we look at that, the next logical step would be to say, hey, public cloud is not for everybody. There is a sizable chunk, like the case study that I'll be talking about a little later, on why they went with private cloud. We will look at the building blocks that exist today in various states on how people do big data on private clouds. And lastly, private clouds also are not for everybody. So we can discuss a lot about which one's the right solution, looking at various use cases that you might want to think about as far as your business workloads go. So, who's a data scientist? I just saw this on Twitter and I thought I should mention it today. A statistician who lives in San Francisco is called a data scientist. How many of you are data scientists? Well, we don't live in San Francisco, but that doesn't mean we're not data scientists, right? Anybody who works with data and tries to make sense of it and delivers some kind of value to the business processes that you are currently working on is, in my opinion, a data scientist. Because somebody on Twitter has something else to say, but yeah. So as a show of hands, how many are actively working on data and as a business improvement tool or a business value addition tool? That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's a very small chunk of the people who are sitting here. So what are the rest doing? Are you management, infrastructure, operations? So how many of you are in, not a data scientist, but do management of infrastructure? Okay, so that's 2 people. So totally I've got 12 hands so far. 10 people are data scientists. 2 are managing infrastructure. The rest, I have no clue what you guys are up to. Well, that's odd because my talk is going to be tailored towards people who are either data scientists or are managing infrastructure. So feel free to stop me and ask, pertaining to your vertical that you happen to be working in, and I'll try my best to relate what I'm talking about to what is more pertinent to you. All right, so big data on public clouds. The whole goal is to figure out why you want to move your data to a public cloud. You've been through the whole session today. There's been a huge number of talks, and all of you must be thinking, okay, I'm now going to move my data to a public cloud. Now, after today's session, I'm actually the last one before the panel happens. So how many of you are planning to move your workload to a public cloud? Show of hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so that's 5 people who have been influenced either today after listening to various speakers or probably have been involved in various other think sessions within their organization, and you've come to the conclusion that you need to move your big data workload to a public cloud. That's great. In fact, for most people, public clouds is the right place to be moving your big data to. Why? The first and very pertinent reason that I personally have been hit with when managing infrastructure is complexity. Big data is usually classified as data that you can't process easily. It doesn't fit on one machine, it doesn't fit on one kind of storage platform, it doesn't fit in the kind of network that you have inside your IT infrastructure. And the moment you have data that's spanning across your infrastructure, management becomes a huge nightmare. How many of you have chosen this as a reason to move to a public cloud? Great. It's not going to solve all your problems. You will have a different set of problems. But you can certainly avoid the complexity part of it. Everything becomes a click, right? You go to the public cloud provider's dashboard, and he has a workflow engine, and you say, I want X amount of storage, Y amount of compute, and you click, 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 and next thing you know, your meter starts running and your credit card starts getting processed. That's how the whole workflow happens. Click, and you do a pay-as-you-go model. This dramatically reduces your initial cost. There are 3 kinds of people who have big data workloads. First is a very small enterprise who's just starting to collect information about their customers or their audience, and now just wants to start some kind of filtering to understand, hey, who's coming to my website? Who's buying stuff at my point of sale? And for them, if they were to think of, oh, I need to go and buy a Teradata system or a huge, I keep forgetting the analytical infrastructure provider's name. Anyway, there are a whole bunch of guys saying there's an upfront cost to it. You have to go buy a license. You have to come in, you have to get your IT team to install it, and the first thing they do is, oh, we don't know about this, we need to go and do some training on it. Now the whole R&D team is like, okay, we're looking at 2 to 3 months of time by the time we can actually look at the data. And that usually doesn't work when business says, I want to know tomorrow what my user or my audience segmentation is, right? So for those people, the first thing they say is, let's just go to a public cloud and be done with it. Now, the moment you decide on that, you again have the awesome utilitarian Amazon Web Services console or Rackspace's Web Services console, where you simply go and click and say, I want this. Next thing you know, you have it. And once you have your infrastructure running in a public cloud, most engineering teams today have some kind of a DevOps practice within their organization. How many of you are familiar with DevOps? It's like 5 hands. Essentially, DevOps is about bringing agility into your IT processes. Now, this can be using workflow engines. It could be using APIs. It could be using bringing processes like continuous integration. You have code. Somebody checks in the code. You have a new build. This build needs to be staged. And once the stage results are out, you do QA certification, and once QA certification is done, it goes into production. And there's a bug found, and the whole cycle repeats. And all of this has to happen automatically. There are still teams who don't have continuous integration. They check in the code, they wait for somebody to come, check out the code, build a new release, package it, move it somewhere, call somebody else from your IT team, open another ticket, follow a change management process, and it takes, 10 days by the time you get your release out? How many of you have continuous integration versus the good old way of getting a change management process done? How many of you demo continuous integration over here? So the moment you're on a public cloud, everything is an API. So you have your entire life cycle of your product being managed using the cloud service provider's API. And that's another critical factor to reduce the amount of time it takes for you to test something. Rapid releases and rapid rollback. They say Facebook makes, 30, 40 releases every week, but you don't get to see it, right? The moment there's an issue, it's automatically fixed and it's continuously pushed into production. There is no grand scheme that they'll wait for a Friday or they'll wait for a Monday to do something. It's all automatic. And companies who have a quick time to market prefer public clouds because they have this huge APIs that's available and can be consumed to roll out releases as and when it happens. So what's your favorite reason now? These are my favorite reasons as to why you would want to go with a public cloud. How many of you agree that pay-as-you-go is the #1 reason to move as a public cloud? Okay, so the rest of this one person who likes pay-as-you-go model, how many of you would prefer rapid provisioning as, so you would be definitely from the dev team. Right, so that's 2 development engineers, R&D teams, who would want rapid provisioning because their internal IT team takes forever to get resources aligned. I can tell you from my background at Inmobi. Inmobi is a very large advertising provider out of Bangalore. They are currently the 2nd largest behind Google, Google for mobile ads. And at the time, a year back, they used to collect 250 gigabytes worth of user activity every day. So in a week, we're already crossed 1 terabyte. In a month, it's 30 terabytes of data that is being accumulated. Now imagine how quickly can I go to SP Road or Flipkart or any of these places and say, give me another 100 hard disks. Because I need to store it somewhere, right? It's not quick. the prices keep fluctuating. There is a procurement process. There is a budget. All of these things take time. And when all these things happen, business is pushing down the engineering team and saying, when will I get my analytics? And the engineering team is like, please talk to the infrastructure guy. So that's two people have that issue. The rest of you probably would be reduce complexity and maybe DevOps. But honestly, I'm very surprised that only two people agreed to or said they would prefer rapid provisioning as a reason to move to public cloud. For us to have relevance in the next slide, I need to get some kind of a feedback as to what your popular reason for moving to a public cloud is. Nobody? I know it's the last session of the day, but hopefully you can. Sorry? The first one, reduce complexity. Okay, so that's a good point. My question would be regarding complexity is in running Hadoop. Is that a complex infrastructure? Or is it the infrastructure itself that it takes to run Hadoop or any of these NoSQL systems a complexity? Which one is it? How many of you run Hadoop? That's a big chunk. Do you run Hadoop yourself, or you have a third party or your IT team who manages Hadoop for you? So the dev team itself manages the infrastructure. On a public cloud or internally on your? Okay, wonderful. Yeah, so it's not easy, right? There are so many single points of failure. There is also running out of disk space, running out of available CPU slots, map and reduce slots, and it keeps going on and on. So, what about private clouds now? So the first and foremost reason why people want to move to a private cloud